sell your flip above market value in 2 weeks using the It's Your Flip system by Danielle Haydock. Introduction. After my husband and I separated, I enrolled my daughter in a new Montessori school in northeastern Ohio. She was in second grade. A few months after she started attending class, the school hired me as their French teacher for preschool through sixth grade. One afternoon, I was at the school bringing my daughter her bathing suit, and as I headed up the stairs to her classroom, I passed one of the teachers sitting in the foyer with a fourth grade male student. He seemed upset, and as I walked by, I could not help but overhear what the student was saying. "I just want to bring a gun to school and shoot them all," he said. I was alarmed. I knew him fairly well. He was also learning French. But what I didn't know is that he was being bullied by some of the other kids in his class for having two dads. I stayed for a few minutes to talk to my daughter's teacher before heading back downstairs. My student and his teacher were still sitting on the bench at the base of the stairs. "I just want to bring a gun to school and shoot them all," I heard him say, again. Who was the school parent liaison, and told her about the incident. She left several messages for the principal, who was also the owner of the school, but never got a call back. The next day, I kept my daughter home from school, waiting to find out how the principal was handling the situation. It took a week before the principal actually had a meeting with the child's parents, a week during which Renee put pressure on the principal to react accordingly. I was fired for making light of the incident, and Renee's son was expelled. It was mid-March, and the public schools in our school district said it was too late in the year to enroll any new students. I was frantic, but Renee gathered information about homeschooling groups in our area, and a few days later we joined the ranks of the homeschooled. This new set of circumstances meant that it was also time for me to reinvent myself. I needed to make a living, but I needed to be able to work from home, so I put into action the plan that brought me to the Midwest from my native Long Island, acquiring rental properties using other people's money. I enrolled in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad mentoring program and jumped into real estate investing. In between homeschooling activities, my daughter and I spent a lot of time looking at houses. And by the time Ava was 13, she knew how to estimate the price of a rehab. It was around that time that she decided she wanted to go to boarding school. She had done her research and had found a boarding school for girls in the mountains of Pennsylvania. I must admit it looked wonderful, but when she showed me the tuition page on their website, I knew it was totally outside of my financial reach. One evening we were sitting at our local Ponderosa, waiting for our food, when the subject of boarding school came up again. But I could not afford to send her to that school, and that if she really wanted to, she would have to figure out how to pay for it. "I could get a job as a waitress," she said coyly. "That sounds good," I answered. "Watch our waitress and see how many tables she's waiting on. She probably makes about $18 an hour with tips. So why don't you figure out how many hours you need to work to come up with your $25,000 tuition?" I left her at the table punching numbers into the calculator on my cell phone as I headed to the salad bar. When I got back to the table, she put the phone down and said, "Waitressing is not going to do it, but flipping a house might work. Do you think you could ask your investor if he would be willing to finance a property for me to flip?" We bought a house 5 doors down from one of my rental properties, and with the help of my business partner's crew, we set about doing the renovation. I handled the day-to-day details, and my daughter oversaw the work. When we were compiling the final punch list, she went over the paint job inch by inch, pointing out flaws where the painter fell short. She was relentless. The painter was taken off guard, thinking she could get away with a quick coat of paint, but my daughter lit into her, leaving her in tears. Once the paint redone, we listed it with a top realtor and waited. It did not bring in a buyer right away, and although it did sell after a month, the sale of the house didn't make enough to finance the first year of school. It did, however, provide seed money to get my flipping career off the ground, which in turn helped pay for school. First, let me start by saying that not every one of my rehabs sold in 2 weeks. However, every one that did, as well as those sold by the rehabbers I know and work closely with, my mentors, my friends, etc., all adhere to the criteria outlined below. As for the flips that I bought, renovated, and sold myself, they did all sell above market value, with the exception of the first one I did with my daughter. The market that I worked in, northeastern Ohio, was very low in price points in relation to a lot of places in the United States. This made it easier to attract hard money lenders to finance projects. The projects I referred to in this book were done between 2013 and 2018, before the market became flooded with first time flippers who drove up the purchase price of foreclosures. Some properties I purchased off the MLS, but I also bought a number of projects from an experienced rehabber who sold his excess inventory. Each property he offered was located within blocks of a project he or one of his partners had rehabbed and sold within the previous 18 months. You couldn't get any better comps. The system, It's Your Flip, that I describe in this book is one that I developed on my own. I do not know any other flippers who proceed this way. It has worked for me, and there is no reason it would not work for you. But I have never shared it with anyone besides my mentor and my own crew. As I watch the northeastern Ohio market, I am starting to see a slow turnaround with the overinflated prices we experienced during the pandemic and post pandemic taking a downward turn. I am gearing up to getting back into flipping. So, what better time for me to write this book, or should I say, finish this book? The first edition of How to Sell Your Flip Above Market in 2 Weeks was written as a handout for a workshop I put on in 2016. It's been for sale as a Kindle book on Amazon, but without the It's Your Flip system component. When I wrote the original edition, I told my fellow rehabber and mentor, Schlebeck, that I wanted to interview him because, after all, he had done at least 150 rehabs at the time, of which 30% had sold within the first 3 days and 60% within the first 2 weeks. Dell has been investing in real estate since 2000 when he started acquiring multifamily buildings while rehabbing at the same time. I pursued him relentlessly until he finally gave in, so even though our ongoing conversations could fill volumes, I kept it short and asked him for his top 10 tips for success. Here they are. Number 1, buy in neighborhoods where people want to send their kids to school. School districts are a prime selling point. 2, buy a typical family house, 2 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, and since 33% of houses sell within the first 30 days, find out in what range these houses fall into. If it's between $200,000 and $300,000, keep your retail selling points within this range. Ask yourself, number 3, who is my buyer? 80% of buyers are first-time home buyers, so look for houses with a backyard. You need to know what people are looking for. Consult with local residents. Number 4, have your house look better than 80% of the houses for sale. Number 5, remodel both kitchen and baths. They are what sell houses. Remember that most owner-occupied houses won't have both bathrooms and kitchen remodeled. Number 6, make your houses look like new, focusing once again on the kitchen and baths. Number 7, keep the style of the house to the taste of 80% of buyers. Don't get too creative with colors, stick to neutrals. Number 8, list your house on the MLS to get the most people to look at your house. 80% of the activity will be within the first 2 weeks. Number 9, pay attention to details. Make sure grout lines are clean, gaps are caulked, and insist on quality workmanship from your contractors. Number 10, stage your houses with towels, artwork, and accent furniture strategically placed. Leave your staging until after the house inspection and, if possible, until after the final walkthrough. I developed the It's Your Flip system over time. It started out as a list of tasks, then evolved into a schedule where I matched each day to a list of what needed to be accomplished that week. I realized that the contractor who was working on one of my projects kept on trying to add jobs that had nothing to do with my main focus, which was to get the house ready to sell. My target date on the wall in huge letters. That's when my contractor walked off the job, never to return. I decided to finish painting myself, and on my second day, 5 days before the target end date, I remember thinking I wished I could sell my home without having to worry about the rest of the painting. That afternoon, my daughter came home from school and announced that one of her friends had to leave the school because they were being evicted from the house that they were buying as a rent to own. The worst part was that they were on the verge of becoming homeless. Ava said to me, "I hate to see him leave, Mom. Do you think you can help his family?" I called the school and asked them to give the family my phone number. In less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Brandy, the boy's mother. I told her that I had heard of their predicaments and I described the house I was getting ready to put on the market. An hour later, I was showing the house to Brandy, her boyfriend, and her son. They had a large family, 3 kids, 4 adults, but in my 6 bedroom, 2.5 bath house, it suited their needs perfectly. I sold it to them on land contract, collected a down payment, and within 3 days they had moved in, 2 days before my target end date. And I should mention that I paid my daughter a commission for facilitating the deal. This turn of events proved to me that when your goal is in plain sight, it moves you to get where you want to go. Your flip is no more than a business plan for your rehab. This system is based on establishing your pay rate for your labor, setting your own price for each task, holding the contractor accountable, and tracking your daily progress. It gives you total control over every aspect of your flip, and how better to get to where you want than by putting you in the driver's seat. All I can say is that both my crew and I were so much happier using this system, and it put more money in my pocket. Your project house. You have probably heard that in real estate, you make your money at the time of purchase. How much you pay for your project impacts your bottom line and your overall profit, whether your intention is to make your property into a rental or sell it. There are other factors that come into play in a rehab. How long you hold on to it, for example. The faster you sell it, the lower your holding costs, such as interest to your lender, insurance, taxes, and utilities. We all know that real estate is all about location, location, location. In the flipping world, though, other components play an important role. As my colleague Dell pointed out to me, 33% of houses sell within the first 30 days. So if you want to sell your house quickly, you need to find out what price range these houses fall into. Between 150,000 and 200,000, look for houses whose retail selling point is within this range. Add to those criteria that 80% of first-time home buyers are looking for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and you can start looking. When I decided to launch myself full-time into rehabs, I realized that I would have to venture outside of my comfort zone. I was familiar with the area where I had purchased several rental properties, but all of a sudden I was looking at listings that were in 3 different counties, and I had no idea whether what I was looking at on my computer screen would qualify as a good candidate for my endeavors. It takes time to search the MLS daily. I used to look at 4 different listing reports every morning while I drank my first cup of coffee. It was time consuming and frustrating. Some banks only allow owner occupied bids on their foreclosures for the first 2 weeks, sometimes the first month. So I had to keep track of which properties it was worth going to see and keep track of when bidding was open to investors. The majority of the properties I purchased from a wholesaler who does all the preliminary work for me. Yes, wholesalers mark up the properties they purchase, so you may not be getting them at the lowest price, but the main thing is to make money. Here are the advantages of buying from a knowledgeable wholesaler. You have the comparables on what is sold in the area, so you know what your resale price might be. You know how well the school district rates. The sales process is short, so you don't have to go through the whole negotiation process with the seller. You can purchase in areas that you're not familiar with. And you can save time by letting your wholesaler handle the due diligence phase. All I had to do was pick up the phone when I was ready for a new property and ask my wholesaler what he had available. It's good to stay in touch so you know when inventory is plentiful or low so that you can plan accordingly. There are certain negatives you want to avoid if your goal is to sell your house within the first 2 weeks of putting it on the market. Avoid houses with railroad tracks bordering your property, especially active railroad tracks. In order to appeal to the broadest range of lenders, rule out properties that may fall outside of some lenders' guidelines. For example, the VA does not loan on houses within close proximity to cell phone towers. On the flip side, other areas present distinct advantages. USDA loans are area sensitive, and there are entire cities that fall within qualifying areas. USDA loans are low interest, no money down, and qualify borrowers for higher amounts than most any of the lenders. I also like what I call entry-level school district neighborhoods. I will consider those houses that are just within the border of a desirable school district, where houses are often lower in price. These homes are desirable and usually sell quickly. Not all houses will fit the 3-bedroom, 2-bath criteria that we identify as ideal. If you find a house with 1 bathroom, see if there's a possibility of adding a second one, even if it's only a half bath. Repurpose space if you can to make the house more desirable. For example, if there's an extra room on the first floor, think of moving a basement laundry room to a more desirable first floor position. One of my recent projects had 4 bedrooms, but the master and the bedroom next to it were both small. We opened up the wall between the two and created a large master with a walk-in closet. The overall end product obviously also impacts your bottom line. Does your final retail price warrant granite countertops or laminate? At the very least, your kitchen should be equipped with a stove and a dishwasher. So will these be stainless or less expensive white or black appliances? Will you add a breakfast bar to your kitchen, an island, or reconfigure the entire kitchen in a more modern feel? Cabinets make or break a kitchen. Will you keep the current cabinets? If they're in good shape, there are a number of things that can be done to modernize the look. A change of hardware can be enough to set them off. Refacing existing cabinets is also an option, as is restaining or sometimes even painting them, as long as it's done tastefully and properly. Does your house have nice modern bathrooms that won't need updating? Even if the pink tile is in great shape, it needs to go. That, of course, holds true of avocado, blue, and yellow. Is the tub chipped, scratched with a cheap plastic surround that has seen better days? You certainly want to tile the walls around the tub instead of putting in another plastic surround. If there is only 1 bathroom in the house, I like to upgrade to a soaker tub. They are deeper and more suited to the adult bather than the regular 12-inch deep tubs. If there's a master bath, however, I like to add a deep tub and make a separate shower if space permits. Flooring is an interesting topic because people's taste is widespread. Some love hardwood floors where others loathe them. Some people only want carpet, others not. Trying to appeal to the broadest range of home buyers is the name of the game. Floating hardwood flooring is popular and offers many different looks and is easy to maintain. I like to use ceramic tile in my kitchens and baths, but products such as groutable laminate tiles that are very durable as well and are easier to install than ceramic tile. A lot of what you're faced with in updating a home is to make it more appealing. Yesterday's gold finishes are outdated today, so you should consider changing light fixtures that are gold, even if they're in great shape and seem beautiful to you. That goes for doorknobs, cabinet hardware, faucets, etc. Chrome is less desirable than brushed nickel, satin finishes, or polished bronze. I personally don't like the polished bronze look because it sometimes looks soiled to me. It's also the most expensive finish and can add on quite a bit to your budget. Paint and color choices are important. Keep your color palette neutral and similar throughout the house. People who rent often find themselves within white walls and they can sometimes go wild when they have their own house. I've seen lime green kitchens and baths, black bedrooms, and blood red powder rooms. In open spaces, those translate into 4 or 5 colors visible from one vantage point. It's relaxing to see a continuous palette with no jarring transitions, even if the potential homebuyer winds up painting every room a different color after they move in. Obviously, you need to consider whether you want to spend money on big ticket items. Does the roof need to be replaced, and will your budget be able to handle that expense? Sometimes only part of the roof needs to be redone. However, juxtaposing a new section to an older one can make the original roof look bad, and that might dissuade a potential buyer from purchasing your project. Another big ticket item is siding. Is it damaged? If it is, you'll wind up having to reside the entire house because siding fades, and unless it's white, it'll be difficult to match. Aluminum siding, unless it's in excellent shape, is usually undesirable because it dents so easily. Siding colors follow trends, just like inside paint colors. If you're considering buying a house with, for example, powder blue siding, well, that's about as popular as pink tile in the bathroom. It has to go. I once replaced perfectly good powder blue siding with a more modern earthy color. Why? Because the powder blue was reminiscent of a long gone era, which would have made the house harder to sell. Winter flips present their own set of issues and challenges. You have to include money for utilities because you can't work in the cold. Roofing and siding may have to be postponed depending on where your project is located, and in that case, if you can't afford to carry extra holding costs, you should think about looking for another project. Whether or not the house has sat vacant through an unusually cold winter can have a huge impact on inventory. We saw 2 winters in a row in northeastern Ohio with sustained periods of time where temperatures stayed below -10 degrees. Winterizing houses, which involves emptying water lines and injecting them with antifreeze, is not always sufficient to protect the plumbing. Shark bite connectors break when exposed to such low temperatures, and PVC pipes as well as galvanized pipes may crack. I saw many porcelain fixtures such as toilet tanks and sinks cracked even without any water in them. Check the winterization date on the sinks to find out how long your house has been sitting. Then backtrack to see what types of temperatures it has been exposed to. Boiler heating systems, whether hot water or steam, are often overlooked when it comes to winterizing. So if your house has sat through a very cold winter, it probably has cracked radiators as well as cracked connectors. In some cases, it's less costly to go to a forced air system, even if it means running ductwork throughout the house. However, replacing the entire system is an expensive venture, so make sure you have room in your budget or make that criteria part of your negotiation strategy. As you gain experience and knowledge, you'll become more comfortable with the scope of work you're willing to take on. Decide in advance what you are willing to tackle. For some, replacing a roof seems too large of an expense to take on, or it may be just too difficult to get a roofing contractor to perform the work in the winter. At the same time, the bigger the issue with a house, the better chance you have to get a good deal, since big problems narrow the pool of potential buyers. I got a house for $18,000 under the list price because there were signs of old termite damage and a cistern instead of a well. The house would have never qualified for a loan, and several potential buyers had already walked away from the deal because of those issues. My cash offer, in addition to my willingness to deal with those issues, got me a great deal in a very desirable school district.
You will be spending quite a bit of time on site, watching over your contractors, so take into account how far away from home or your workplace your rehab is located. I didn't mind taking an hour ride every day because I don't have a day job, but if you do, taking a ride to the job site on your lunch break may be your only way of catching your contractors on site to discuss necessary details. How much time does all this take? And is it really feasible to do a rehab and have a full-time job? Well, you won't be the first nor the last to take on that type of a project. You certainly don't want to quit your day job until your rehabbing career has taken off and can sustain your lifestyle, unless you're a lifelong entrepreneur who just jumps into the deep end, like me. It's all in the details. Like my colleague and mentor Dell says, concentrate on making your houses better than 80% of your competition. That way, when a buyer is out looking at houses, yours stands out. You may be wondering, what puts a house in that category? Well, take a development of houses that are very similar, built by the same builder. If I'm rehabbing in that type of neighborhood, I'll look to make some major modification that none of the original homes has, such as opening up a small kitchen onto a great room. I want the neighbors to walk in and think, wow, this is what I could do to my house. And buyers to see how different my rehab is compared to the houses on the block. Today's home buyer is attracted to large spaces, great rooms, bonus rooms, finished basements, double masters, and home offices. Carefully choose one feature to transform, and you've created a wow factor. What are some examples of wow factors? The first time I walked into the kitchen of my lakefront house, I imagined myself cooking in that kitchen. I positioned myself where I was envisioning the island, but when I looked up, I realized that the view of the lake was blocked by a wall. In order to see the lake from the kitchen, we would have to add 2 windows. The day the new windows were put in place, I felt uplifted and validated. You could now see the lake from the dining room, the living room, and the kitchen. That certainly qualified as a wow factor. One of my rehabs, a 2-story house, had twin master bedrooms on the second floor. The staircase was wide and beautiful, but once you reached the top of the stairs, the slanted ceiling forced you to duck as you made a sharp turn to enter the rooms. By adding a dormer, we increased the ceiling height to 12 feet, and now we also installed a picture window. Not only did we have a spacious landing, but right across from the window, we created a loft, perfect for curling up with a book or sitting with the whole family to watch fireworks. Concentrate on turning an eyesore into a key feature of the house. Create an open floor plan. Eliminate walls that impede a cohesive flow. Add a needed bathroom or something that is very desirable, like a first-floor laundry room. Improve flow in a cramped bathroom or in a kitchen. Transform a basement into a rec room or create a walk-in closet. Most homeowners who decide to remodel parts of their home do just that, one part. They wind up regretting that they didn't have more money to change another aspect of the house that had been bugging them. Oftentimes, they can't afford to make major structural changes to their house, or they're afraid to take out a load-bearing wall. They live in their houses wishing that it had something that it is lacking. In some real estate markets, updating the bathroom or the kitchen doesn't increase the market value of a home, so there's no incentive for the homeowner to over-improve their property. But for the purpose of rehabbing and offering a superior product, both kitchen and bathroom updates are just a part of the overall overhaul of the house. For the buyer, purchasing your rehab gives them the opportunity to have a lot of what they've always wanted. A lot of the houses that we rehab have issues that we make a point of correcting. Toilets smushed up against a wall or an odd bump out built around a pipe can all be reconfigured. With the exception of small powder rooms where there may be no wiggle room, there is no reason that the buyer of a rehabbed house should feel cramped on the commode. That's where a rehabbed house is an advantage over owner-occupied houses. We have an opportunity to do what most homeowners cannot afford to accomplish, so we can offer like new homes. When a buyer sees their new house after the previous owners leave, it's empty. Without all the furnishings that were in place when they viewed it, they can see now what was not previously noticeable. You're not going to find wear patterns in the carpet in a newly rehabbed property, or an unsightly stain that was hidden under the entertainment center. The walls won't have darker areas where the family portraits hung, or the 56-inch TV. You won't be looking at 15 horizontal lines where the previous family members' names written on the wall every time you open the pantry door. Even though it may be cute to reminisce over how short little Annie was when you moved into your house, if Annie isn't part of your household, it loses its appeal. There are a lot of little things that the house inspector can't wait to include in his report. They love to make a big deal of all those loose wires hanging from the basement rafters, the one that no one bothered to remove after Uncle Bob rewired the switch to the bathroom heater, the outdoor lights, and countless little upgrades done over the years. As with everything, it's all in the details. Do the miter cuts in the wood trim match up? Or are there gaps between them? Are there gaps between the baseboard and the wall or the baseboard and the shoe molding? Is the grout around the tiles uniform and even? Did the painter miss a spot? Are the light fixtures, appliances, or faucets outdated? Are they gold or whatever finish went out of style this year? If the molding doesn't match up and the grout isn't uniform, what other details were overlooked in the rehabbing process? As your potential buyer is walking through the house, Mom is envisioning herself preparing a meal in the spacious kitchen or having coffee in the conservatory. Dad, however, is imagining her to-do list and how many hours of free time he's going to have to sacrifice to make her happy. Everyone wants to move into a house where you can just unpack and enjoy. No one wants to incur the expense of changing the mechanicals of a house, but these are probably the first items that cross the mind of your potential buyer. Your furnace has to look good. If it is in perfect functioning order, make sure it is clean and shiny. A water heater that is stained, even if it's newer, makes a poor first impression. It's well worth it to replace a tired water heater to rack up brownie points with your potential buyers. I have seen far too many recent flips where an ancient furnace and a leaky water heater were left in place. If you do choose not to replace certain items, offer a home warranty to put your buyers at ease. Old electrical panels should be replaced and updated. One inspector I had hired tagged a rusty electrical panel and included a report that there was an active water infiltration coming in from the outside. The only thing is that he didn't notice that there was an enclosed porch above the meter that had been there for 20 years. Therefore, there could not have been any active water infiltration. He also estimated the repair to be worth $1,200, which was way above what it costs. Remember that most home buyers rely on their inspector's report, and they will use his findings to attempt a renegotiation of the price after they're under contract. Paying special attention to what a home inspector might flag will pay off in the long run. Take out an old water softener, the garbage disposal, intercom systems, and old telephone jacks. Inspectors will also flag outlets that are not grounded, non-GFI outlets close to sinks, faucets, etc. Take a good look at the attic and whether the bathroom exhaust fans are properly vented. Many older houses have exhaust fans that just vent into the attic, which can cause mold. Make sure your attic is free of mold and your exhaust fans vent to the outside. Radon inspections. I really have had to remediate radon in my flips, but before I sold my last house, I decided to buy myself a radon detector. I was selling the house in the dead of winter, and I learned that radon levels vary according to a slew of factors, such as humidity, severe weather conditions, etc. Airing out the basement and moving air with a fan brought the radon level down to a normal reading. And it was such an easy fix compared to the hassle of installing a radon elimination system or hiring an overpriced specialist to do it. At the end of every project, we send in our post-construction cleaning crew. Throughout the rehab, the house has been exposed to massive quantities of dust. Anytime you sand, tiny particles get deposited on every surface, in every crack and crevice. As much as I gripe about protecting everything to avoid breaking the glass top range that is perfectly fine, or scratching the brand new granite or the cabinets that we chose not to replace, dust, dirt, and grout seem to have a mind of their own and inevitably cover everything. Post-construction cleaning has nothing to do with household cleaning or even commercial cleaning. There are tons of specialty products that come out to play. The works is for rust stains, stubborn stains that live deep in the scratches of the bathtub, or for fixtures that need a facelift. Stainless steel polish, chrome polish, goof off, and other specialty products should be among your cleaner's arsenal. Swiffer-like products should be banned, as in any combination with plaster dust or drywall dust, they will ruin flooring and other surfaces. Every door ledge, wall, light fixture, every piece of window trim needs to be wiped down. Light globes need to come down and be cleaned. The furnace and water heater need to be wiped down. Basement cobwebs kept at bay. Windows should be done inside and out, and screens removed and stored in the garage so they don't make the windows look dirty. Cigarette butts around the worksite need to be picked up. Walkways need to be swept, weeds pulled, lawn mowed. Train your own crew to clean as they go to make sure not to wait until the last minute. Ask questions of your suppliers, of your contractors, of those you're looking to hire. Contractors routinely cut corners, and if you glaze over small details, they may too. Coordinating the flow on your job site requires great attention to detail, and in the end, overlooking some detail could cost additional money as you backtrack and redo things until they're right. If you didn't pay attention to where the bathroom fan vents out to, The home inspector sure will. I am very hands-on when it comes to my rehab projects. Back in the day when I watched Candace Olsen from HGTV show Divine Designs, I remember her always saying, "If it's your flip, be there." And so I am. And you should too. It doesn't mean I cannot delegate. It just means that I can never be 100% sure that what I said or thought I clearly communicated is what the other person actually understood. For example, one project we were doing required reconfiguring the closets in the master to make one large walk-in. After going back and forth on what I thought would be the best design, we agreed to eliminate the old bifold doors and drywall over the former door opening to create a wall where the closet doors had been. The next day I walked in and the doors were still there. "Oh no, I thought we had decided not to take out those doors," the foreman said. Obviously, we were on two different wavelengths. No big deal. But then there was Frank, whose specialty, according to him, was tile, flooring and decorative tile surrounds and backsplashes. I had a long conversation with Frank regarding a shower enclosure. I had found a metallic tile I wanted to use as a 5-inch wide inlay, but it was slightly thinner than the ceramic tile we were using in the rest of the bathroom. I wanted to know if it would be an issue. "No problem," he says. He will build it up behind the tile, making up for the difference in thickness with mortar. So I come back to the job with a metallic tile for the inlay. Frank is on board. We discuss where the inlay is to fall within the tub and shower surround. We decided the inlay should be some 2 feet from the ceiling. We're going to stay away from the faucet and the shower head areas. The following day, we basically have the same conversation, and I draw on the wall where the inlay is supposed to be. Normally, I would arrange to be on the job when we start tiling, but Frank didn't seem to be able at this point to work within my schedule. I wasn't entirely surprised when, totally out of turn in the schedule, Frank calls me asking if he can make a change in the design because of the window on the far side of the bathroom. I agreed, but reiterated that I would be all right with the change as long as the inlay stayed away from the faucets and the shower head. The next day, I come to look at Frank's progress. The inlay tile is 1/8 of an inch sunken down below the level of the rest of the tile, and the shower handle is directly in the path of the inlay, forcing the plate to sit half on the tile, half on the inlay, flush with neither and with a large gap between the plate and the tile. I had painstakingly taken over 2 hours discussing exactly what I expected, and Frank went and blew it. And, to add injury to insult, he refused to fix any of his jobs. It's always easier and less costly to fix the problem before the project has progressed too far. Admittedly, there have been times when my tile combinations or choices were not as harmonious as I thought they would be. When you catch the mistake early, within the first few rows, it can be corrected without incurring a major expense. So make it a habit to be there and sign off on designs early. I use tile as an example, but being hands-on applies to everything. The first day on the job for a new hire installing drywall or finishing drywall warrants a personal visit from yours truly. I may not know how to do it myself, but I can sure recognize when it's not done well from the beginning, and I will fire the drywaller right away. A new paint color, flooring of any kind, where fixtures are going, including where curtain rods will be installed, I want to be there. If you have a general contractor or a foreman running the job, make it known to them when you want to be on the job to oversee what is supposed to be happening. I will always be there when our kitchens are measured for granite. But I also want my foreman there to make sure I don't forget some crucial detail. 2 heads are better than 1 in some cases. There are plenty of programs that will give you a ballpark figure on what your renovation costs. But you need to go over every inch of your project to establish what your actual budget is, item by item. You can start by going over the outside of the house. Take a long, hard look at the facade. Does it need new windows? How many? What size? Are you going to stick with replacing what is there, or would you achieve an extra wow factor by adding a bay window? Does the front door need to be replaced? What about the storm door? Will you replace it with a door of the same size or change the entire entryway? As you probably know, every decision you make will impact the future value of the house and the way the potential buyer views it. The roof may be in excellent shape, but if it's stained and looks older than it is, it may turn off a potential buyer. What is the exterior like? Do you need to put up vinyl siding or replace what's there? Does the house have a porch? Does it need work or should it be replaced? Once you have gone around the house and noted all the work to be done on each side, it's time to step back and take a look from the street. How's the curb appeal? Are there overgrown bushes and trees? How is the lawn? Are the flower beds clean and tidy? Is the garage door outdated with 1960s decorative elements? Not everything needs to be replaced. Sometimes swapping out-of-date details like cabinet hardware or light switches can go a long way to modernizing a property. Managing your labor costs. When my teenage daughter discovered Judy Blume, she decided she had had enough of homeschooling and wanted to enroll in public school. The problem was that the school district where we currently lived had an abysmal track record, so we took advantage of the open enrollment in a school district some 15 miles away. Most of my jobs were 20 miles in the opposite direction, so picking her up from school was wreaking havoc on my work. My search for a house that I could finance through my private lender network was proving to be difficult. Every available property within her new school district was either a teardown or way out of my price range. Finally, a project house came on the market with a hefty price tag. That didn't deter me, though. It was a 2,000 square foot, 2-story house with a great room, a den, 2 bathrooms, and 2 bedrooms for $60,000. My realtor did her homework, and we realized that in that area, of all the houses on the market, there wasn't a single move-in ready house listed above $90,000. We wrote an offer for $30,000 with a detailed list of work that needed to be done, which made it clear that at $60,000, the house was outrageously overpriced. To my amazement, the bank countered at $33,000. The house was rough but livable, and most importantly, it was a 5-minute walk from my daughter's school. One of my priorities was to redo the upstairs bathroom. The first contractor I hired put in place the spa tub, but hooking up the electrical proved to be too difficult for him. A few weeks later, I met a contractor at Habitat for Humanity who seemed to know his stuff, so I asked him over to give me a quote. He showed up with his partner. My first question was, how long would it take them to do the work, which consisted of installing a commode, a vanity, and hooking up the water and electricity to the spa tub? Their answer was 6 days. I was happy with that. Then I told them I would be purchasing all the materials, which they didn't really like. But that's one thing I do not budge on. I always purchase the materials for all of my rehabs. Within a few minutes, they came up with a price. $5,800. I thought it was a bit steep, so I did what I always do, apply a logical approach to break down the quote. If you divide $5,800 by 6, it comes out to $966 a day. Divide that by 2 since there were 2 guys, and that is just shy of $500 a day each. When I pointed that out and asked if I could go to work for them, the partner mentioned that he was only going to be working the job on the last 2 days because he was the painter of the team. Now, I had not asked for the room to be painted because I had my own painter on staff, so naturally I asked how much they would be taking off for the paint job. The painter got upset and claimed that the price was firm, that they were partners, so they would be splitting what they would be making. When I reiterated that they were asking me for almost $1,000 a day for basically the work of one jack of all trades, I asked them if they realized how much that translated into an hourly rate. Their answer is one you need to get used to. We don't work for an hourly rate, just a flat rate. It's a matter of semantics because you can break any job down into time, and each hour has a price tag, just as each task and the level of skill of the contractor has a price tag. So although it may seem a lot easier to ask a bunch of contractors for bids than sort through them to make your choice, it keeps you at the mercy of the greed of the opportunistic. I was not interested in getting ripped off for any aspect of my job. I just wanted to pay what was fair. With a tight budget, I realized that remaining in control of my costs would be the key to assuring the profitability of my project. In my mind, the only way to do that is to set the price for each aspect of the work myself. How do you do that? It is not a difficult process. It is time intensive, but ultimately worth the time invested. You will soon realize that once your pricing is in place and your contractors or crew have agreed to your terms, you're never at the mercy of a fickle contractor again. You have taken control of the job. Once I realized that setting the price for each task was the only way I would stay on budget, I took a good hard look at labor costs and came up with a 3-tier scale. This is what it looks like. Skill level 1, entry level, unskilled labor. This is typically the broom pusher, the helper who unloads materials, who loads the dumpsters, mixes grout to the specifications of their superior, or refills the paint pans and cleans the paintbrushes. Skill level 2, experienced but not expert. This is the person who has proven themselves in certain areas such as carpentry, sheetrock, tile, plumbing, etc. Skill level 3, skilled expert labor. This is the licensed electrician, the roofer, the siding contractor. For each specialty, levels 2 and 3 have their own hourly dollar amount. This amount varies by region, so find out how much labor costs are in your particular area for each specialty. Home Depot has an excellent guide that details how much you should expect to pay by project, by region, or state that you can use as a guide to put together your project budget. I always pay above the going rate. I want my crew to feel appreciated, but I also want them to realize that they have to show me they are worth the extra money. Next, I determine how long each task should take by putting myself in the observation seat. You can watch a YouTube video if you have no idea of what is involved, but for example, if I was going to lay tile in a 12 by 12 room, I determined how long that would take me to 1. Pick up the tile at the store. 2. Unload the truck into the area. 3. Set myself up with all my materials and determine my starting point, where I'm going to make my tile cuts, etc. 4. Lay tile in a 2 by 2 area and multiply that to get to the entire surface of the room. 5. Measure the area where I have to cut separate tiles, go to my tile cutter and cut my tiles. 6. Finish laying the tile, clean up. 7. Setting up at a later date to grout and clean up. This job takes place over a period of 3 days and probably would take 16 hours for a complete beginner, less than 10 hours for someone with experience. So for that job, I will allocate 16 hours at the rate of my skill level 2. If my skill level 2 for tiling pays $20 an hour, 20 times 16 is $320. I pay $320 for a 12 by 12 room for tiling. Now that you have established how much your tiling cost is, you can adjust that number for all of your rooms that need tiling, using a flat rate for tiny spaces like half baths. When I schedule the job on my flow chart, I will add an extra day or 2, depending on the size of the job. So if a specific task takes 4 days, I will block 6 or 7 days in my schedule so that the person doing the job can do it when works best for them. When do my workers get paid? My contractors, my crew members included, get paid upon completion of each specific task, plus 2 days for my inspection. So if the task is finished on Tuesday, I reserve the right to take 2 full days to inspect the work in person. I will not pay from photos taken by a contractor, which means I will pay for that task by Thursday evening or Friday morning. I do not pay for any incomplete jobs, so if a contractor starts a job and doesn't finish, they don't get paid. The person who completes the task gets paid the full amount. Needless to say, I have rarely had anyone leave in the middle of a job. If a task is assigned 6 days on the schedule and it is a 4-day job, If it's not started by the second assigned day, the contractor who signed up for the job loses the job and it is up for bids by the other crew members. On page 56, there are 2 charts that show the flow of a job with the amount that it's paid, when it needs to be started, when it needs to be finished. Although I do not schedule work for the weekends unless absolutely necessary, my crew members may work on the weekend, but the start date of the job is non-negotiable. Too many things can happen on a weekend to allow it to be a scheduled workday. I previously mentioned that I'm very hands-on when it comes to my rehab projects. Even when I had more than one at a time and they were sometimes an hour away from each other, I still visited each one daily. Choosing the time of day to check out the job is important. It takes a good hour and a half for most people to ramp up to the point where they are totally focused on the task at hand. The optimum productive time usually falls between 10 and 12 p.m. So avoid visiting then, because as soon as you walk onto the job site, all the questions your crew has and all the attention they are seeking is turned towards you, and work slows or stops, the momentum broken. When you do arrive at the job site, be thorough with your inspection. It's easy to get distracted by a question, a professional discussion, or friendly banter, so make sure you take note and document every change and every bit of progress made since the day before. As a woman, I face particular obstacles when it comes to contractors. They assume they can pull the wool over my eyes, so I assert myself by showing them that I am paying attention to every detail and holding them accountable for every aspect of the work we agreed upon. I usually work with my own crew, a team of workers who have more than one skill set. My carpenter may also lay tile or be adept at repairing sheetrock. My ex-husband, who was a painting contractor, was also very talented at plaster work, sheetrock installation and repairs, so if we had been able to work together, I would have used him for both of those tasks. The best case scenario is to have a regular crew that reports only to you every morning. But that only happens if your crew knows that there's enough work to keep them busy and that they won't be looking for work once the current project is finished. If they don't trust that there will be ongoing work, you will probably lose them at the most crucial point of your project. As soon as I have the next house under contract, I make sure to take my crew to see it so they have a tangible proof that there is more work after they're done with what they're currently finishing up. It gets them excited about the next project and keeps them on track. It also gives you credibility with your crew, all of whom have too often worked for one-hit wonders who overpromised and underdelivered. When I make out my schedule, I often assign tasks, but some tasks are left up to the contractors to choose. I usually notify everyone when I will be posting a new flowchart so they can sign up for the work they want. I am there to answer any questions they may have, and I always go over each task, making sure they agree with my time allocation for the job. The conversation may go something like this. Living room, paint walls and ceiling, $400. Each 8x10 wall is worth $50, and the ceiling is included in that number. Since the dining room is 20x20, we have the equivalent of 8 walls at $50 equals $400. I scheduled 3 days for this job starting October such and such. Can you get the job done within the scheduled time? This is how I explain the system to anyone I'm thinking of hiring. 1. Each contractor is responsible for completing the job they signed up for or were assigned and accepted. 2. Contractors get paid at the end of the job plus 2 days from my in-person inspection. All materials are furnished by me, so you don't have to lay any money out for materials. There are no partial payments, no payments before you start the job, just one final payment at the end. If you do not complete the job, you do not get paid. No job will be paid unless I have inspected it personally, so please do not submit any photos. 3. Contractors agree to the schedule, and each job has been padded with at least 2 extra days. The job does not have to be started by the first day, but it must be started by the day indicated on the schedule to be finished in time for the end date. 4. If you do not start the job by the must-start date, you lose the work and it will be reassigned to someone else. The only job that may be rescheduled is outside work that may be subjected to adverse weather conditions. Once you've put together your list, look at what you want to outsource, like the roof or the siding or the windows. I had a dear friend who did all my roofing. I never shopped around because he was always fair and his work was guaranteed and of excellent quality. Septic systems, wells, and other highly specialized items require specialists, but think things through before signing for high-priced remediation that may offer disappointing results. I've seen a number of basement water leaks resolved just by cleaning out the gutters. However, basement waterproofing services will try to sell you expensive and invasive solutions when just a coat of waterproofing paint on the walls will do the trick. And above all, don't let inspection reports or contractors scare you into committing to unnecessary options. Inspectors love to put price tags on everything, but just remember that it only takes a few weekends in a classroom to obtain the credentials to be an inspector, which means they can exaggerate a property's shortcomings. This is true whether they're representing you, a buyer, or the seller. Always do your due diligence. One of my first projects came with a seller's disclosure report and an estimate for $7,000 worth of lead remediation. Before writing an offer on the house, I consulted a specialist who was willing to work with me to reduce the overall remediation cost. We outlined a plan where I could use my own crew to do the bulk of the work, under his supervision. Then he told me to buy a lead kit and test each area mentioned in the report myself. When I did, I found not one of the spots the report mentioned tested positive. Just for good measure, I had the specialist come in to confirm my findings. In the meantime, I went back to the listing agent and submitted an offer that took into account the lead remediation work that was included in the seller's disclosure. Using your own crew can save you a lot of time and money. My crew took on siding and window replacement, landscaping and tree cutting, concrete pouring, and masonry work. Not having to wait for outside contractors to fit us into their schedule helped tremendously to keep us on schedule. On one of our projects, the day the water company turned the water on, we realized the pipe leading to the street was leaking. It required replacing the pipe all the way from the house to the street. When my project manager called me with the bad news, I was on another job site, and it conjured up a memory of a neighbor who had run into the same issue. It took weeks for him to get a contractor to show up, and a whole week to finish the job. Somewhat unnerved by what I had just discovered, I drove an hour to take a look at the issue myself. I got out of the car, braced myself, and asked the project manager how much of a setback I should expect. "What do you mean?" he asked, a strange look on his face. "Yeah, how long is this going to delay us?" I reiterated. "It's already fixed," he said. "Everybody grabbed a shovel and we had it done in no time." Some adverse weather conditions can be worked around with a little creativity. One of our projects was a 45-day flip with an end date of January 6. The walkway to the front door was chewed up and desperately needed some cosmetic help. We kept on looking at the weather for a window of opportunity, but we were rapidly getting down to the wire. With freezing temperatures getting in the way of the paint drying properly, my crew came up with the brilliant idea of building a plastic tunnel all around the walkway and blowing hot air into the tunnel. With an end date right after New Year, I was somewhat nervous. A few weeks before, my entire crew was out of commission for a few days when the steak they all decided to order at our holiday party gave them food poisoning, and I could not afford any more delays. Not knowing how messed up my crew might get on New Year's Eve, I decided to host a New Year's Eve party. My entire crew, including their families and dogs, slept over to make sure that they stayed safe and they would all make it back into work on January 2nd. Winter conditions also come with health issues that can slow down your job. Working in close quarters offers an ideal breeding ground for colds, flu, and other things, so my first aid kit is always stocked with Airborne, which is freely passed around at the first sneeze or cough. My policy is that my workers or contractors get paid upon the completion of each job. So once the bathtub surround is tiled, I give myself 2 days to get to the job site to inspect before I write a check for the work done. If it isn't done to my satisfaction, it needs to be corrected. I don't just pay on your word or because you showed me a picture of the job. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but it can hide 100 sins. I like to hire my own contractors or crew members and get to know them individually. Whenever I have let one of my guys take a lead role and hire all the help on the job, we have run into unreliable workers who didn't care about deadlines, quality of work, and other nightmarish situations. I want everyone who works at my job site to be invested in the job and get along with the other crew members. We have all walked into a store or restaurant where all the waitresses are rude or all the cashiers are crabby. We know very well that attitude has a trickle-down effect. If the managers have a bad attitude towards their staff, the staff will treat the customers the same way. So I want the people who work with me to like me. If they speak badly of me behind my back and spread ill will about me, then they have to go. At some point, the job will suffer too if that's how my worker feels. Most of the time, I personally screen those I hire. I don't necessarily rule out Craigslist applicants, but I do ask a lot of questions before I consider meeting someone in person. Someone who tells me they worked on a lot of commercial projects translates to me as, I only work 5 days. You probably can't afford me, and I hate having to work around others. I admit this is probably biased. Anyone who says they work in maintenance or as a handyman, I view with the utmost suspicion. My translation? I quick fix and patch up things as best I can. When selling your rehab fast and high depends on quality and attention to detail, you can't afford to make do. Putting together your budget. Once you have decided what you have to replace, repair, reconfigure, and just plain get rid of, it's time to think about what you are going to add. If only some of the windows need to be replaced, do you have to replace the newer ones? Well, it all depends on whether the ones you do not replace are going to stick out because they are different from the new ones. It's important to have a clear plan of action before you start. Decide how much of an upgrade you should consider. Will your countertops cost you $1,500 or $35,000? A house under $150,000 does not warrant granite countertops. Just as spending $35,000 on countertops for a $250,000 house would be ridiculous. Put your money where it counts, in nice finishes, an exotic piece of wood for the bar counter, wood molding, a built-in, a vanity, or tile. Once you have your list of work to be done, it's time to start pricing each task. Armed with precise measurements, you can price out your materials. Tile, trim, paint, sheetrock, windows, appliances, those are all easy to figure out. If you are unsure what to figure for plumbing supplies, for example, just sit down with your plumber and ask him what he will need. Managing your materials budget. The first golden rule: always buy your own materials. It is easy to tell your contractor to grab a toilet while they're at the store, but remember how fun it is to spend other people's money. I used to be a personal shopper in Manhattan, and I loved buying $1,000 set of sheets at Bloomingdale's and scarves at Hermes and bags at Prada. But when it came to my money, no one spends it more judiciously than I do. The one and only time I told my plumber to pick up 2 toilets at Home Depot, he came back with 2 $300 toilets for a low-end flip. He couldn't be bothered to spend the extra time and price them out. The next day, I went to one of my closeout stores and got the same toilets for $40 each. Yes, I did negotiate, and I also had $400 worth of other materials, but don't throw away my money because you think it's not coming out of your paycheck, because at some point it is. There are plenty of ways to save money on a flip without sacrificing quality. Develop relationships with store managers and let them know exactly what you are interested in. The pro services manager at one of the local Lowe's used to call me with deals on returned merchandise, cabinets, appliances, tile, bathroom fixtures. You can get first dibs on all sorts of goodies: a truckload of new doors, windows, entire kitchens that the secondhand stores pick up and would rather unload at your job site than take them back to the store, unload, inventory, and put up for sale individually. I have equipped entire kitchens with cabinets bought straight off the loading dock for less than $1,500. I pick out all my colors, materials, hardware, appliances, etc. For a lot of people, a sink is a sink or a tub is a tub, but most of my family bathrooms will have a soaker tub or a garden tub. A kitchen sink with a tall faucet makes a statement. Cheap cabinet hardware may be in order to keep within budget, but if you can find something with a little more class, even at a discount outlet, then I'll go the extra mile. I've been spotted at our local restore sifting through doorknobs to find just what I wanted and saved hundreds of dollars doing so. I have a list of outlet and building material stores that I visit on a regular basis. I also get calls from these very same stores letting me know when a shipment of doors is expected or a brand new appliance comes in. Tile stores have boxes of expensive tile returned by customers that they will sell you for a fraction of the regular cost. There are smaller stores that specialize in markdowns of all sorts, like the resellers that carry ridiculously high-end expensive faucets for $20 or $30 each. There is one huge warehouse stuck in the middle of nowhere where I would always go to purchase my cabinet hardware, doorknobs, and trim. Remember the $400 toilets? Or should I say the $200 toilets I buy? I only buy those if the place is out of the ones I can't get for only $45. Buy where the professionals buy. I know a lot of people itching to use their outrageously priced Direct Buy memberships, but believe me, whatever you purchase from Direct Buy costs a lot more than what the pros spend. For those who swear by craft-made Direct Buys, you know those places where you show up early in the morning and wait in a long line to get in? You can make much better deals without the hassle. Just do your homework, check out the alternative stores, and be aware of what to buy where. As for paint, be very careful which brand you purchase. And once you have found something that works for you and does not require a third coat, stick with it. It is cheaper in the long run to only apply 2 coats of a more expensive paint than incur extra labor and paint costs. Stick to specific colors that perform well. We once did a rehab for a fellow investor. He chose a light coffee color for one of the bedrooms. The first day it went on the walls, I hated it. It appeared a lot darker than I had thought. When I returned later in the day, it was a light lavender. In this full sun, it took on yet another hue. Pay attention to the different colors that went into the mix because you may see every one of them come through with every change of lighting. For my own flips, I settled on 3 colors. White for the ceilings, a light gray, and a darker gray for accent walls. I kept that color scheme throughout each property. It was classy, clean, and trendy at the same time. Homeowners will appreciate the use of one color throughout. Consistency has a soothing effect. It can be jarring when you walk through a house with different colors in every room. Imagine being in the living room and looking towards the kitchen and catching a glimpse of 4 different colors in succession. Lime green from the kitchen that looks onto the yellow great room to one side and a brick red wall from the dining room. I have seen too many of these homes, and I shudder to think of how many my carefully painted projects have turned into all of those multicolored messes. How to avoid surprises. If you have watched flipping reality shows, you know that every project hides some unforeseen catastrophe. How to avoid surprises. If you have watched flipping reality shows, you know that every project hides some unforeseen catastrophe. It can come in the form of a leaking pipe, a foundation issue, or some craziness lurking behind the drywall. I was once interviewed by a production company looking to produce a new flipping show. The producer asked me to have my project manager on Skype with me. First, he asked me how we would resolve differences of opinion, to which my project manager responded, "We have no differences of opinion. She's the boss." The next question was, how do you react to a big problem on the job, like when you discover a leaking pipe behind the drywall? Well, I pad my budget with an extra $5,000 to address hidden issues. It was not what the producer wanted to hear. My answer did not conjure up images of screaming flippers like the guy in Las Vegas. I never heard back from him, but I sure like the way I handle things better than some of these TV flippers. In reality, there are plenty of things you can do to avoid surprises. It's a lot cheaper to learn from other people's experiences, so ask other flippers what kind of issues they've encountered and what they learned from them. Don't be one of these flippers who wants to do everything all on their own just because they think they know best. Staying on schedule and on budget. Flipping is all about profitability, and what eats into your profitability is overspending. Every extra day translates into additional taxes, utilities, financing costs, insurance, and labor. As if that weren't enough, unless you keep a watchful eye on your materials, you can easily overshoot your budget. Every project encompasses hundreds of details, and staying on top of it all can become overwhelming. Organization is key to every successful flip. Luckily for me, I love systems, and I have an uncanny sense for flow. I'm a self-professed jack of all trades, master of none, but as the rest of the saying goes, oftentimes better than master of one. I have managed teams as an event coordinator, as well as in the restaurant that I created from build out to daily management. I had learned the art of creating flowcharts from one of my 9-to-5 jobs. The build out of a commercial space offered me a valuable experience of how to deal with recalcitrant code enforcement officials. I firmly believe that your experiences throughout your life all come into play at some point or another, and rehabbing certainly proved that to be true. Putting together your task list is time-consuming, but well worth it. Mine lists the job at hand, the amount I am paying, and who is performing that job. I usually expand it to show the date paid. To give you an idea of what it looks like, on page 80, there's a task list that I used from my Mill Street project. Next, it's time to put everything into the schedule flowchart. The following is an actual flowchart, but for a different project. It starts on page 84, and it outlines every week from the beginning to the end of the project. So here's the part where I put in my shameless plug for my book. I'm reading the audiobook to you, but I could not include, obviously, all of the charts. And basically, the charts are really what makes the whole system flow. These are the charts that you're going to be using to make sure that you stay on top of your budget costs, as well as your labor costs, and keep your job moving so that your contractors stay on task as well. So you can get my book on Amazon. It's called How to Sell Your Flip Above Market Value in 2 Weeks. You can find it either on Amazon, or you can also order it from my website, which is itsyourflip.com. That's ITS, your is UR, flip, FLIP.com. Itsyourflip.com. So let's move on to the staging part. Staging to sell. Okay, so you finished the renovation process. Now what? Do you call in the realtor to take pictures of a vacant house, or do you call in a staging company? I staged my projects with rented furniture and my own personal inventory of furniture and accessories. But before we even talk about whether you should hire another entity, let's talk about why we stage our renovated homes. Let's start with window treatments. Unfiltered sunlight can reveal uneven spots in the walls and even change the color of the walls. Adding window treatments can help enhance the house by filtering that natural sunlight. Some rehabbers install inexpensive blinds that they leave slightly open. Personally, I prefer to install curtain rods and pocket curtains, or even tension rods with shears. There are great deals online to purchase shears for somewhere as little as $5 a panel. You really do not have to spend a lot of money for curtains, especially since there's a good chance the homeowners will ask for the window treatments in the contract. The dollar stores are great sources for inexpensive curtains and a lot of other staging items. So why stage, you say? I'm sure that staging professionals would say that staging vacant homes is important to initially capture buyer interest. When you hire a professional, they tend to stage the entire home from the foyer to the bathrooms. It can be quite expensive since each piece has a monthly rental price in addition to the initial staging fee. For me, staging is about guiding the homeowner to imagine the uses of each room, especially when they may not be clear. For example, taking out walls to create an open space might make it difficult for a potential home buyer to visualize where their furniture could go to bring the space alive. So a multi-purpose space could include a table or dining room area. If you put a table in the space, you should set the table to create the illusion of an inviting dining experience. Use a tablecloth or placemats, plates, silverware, napkins, and glasses, maybe even a centerpiece. If the style of the house permits, use playful colors. If the style of the house is more formal or classic, set the table more appropriately. Make it inviting so people want to sit right down. Kitchen staging. You don't need a ton of accessories, although a strategically placed mat in front of the sink, some dish towels, maybe some pretty pot holders can add a little color and interest. I like to place cookbooks, maybe a bowl with fruit, sometimes flowers. If there's a breakfast nook or a bar, make sure you have bar stools and either a small place setting or maybe glasses on the bar. Dining rooms and living rooms don't necessarily need tables, couches, or chairs. Oftentimes they tell their own story, but many rehabbers I know like to add artwork to most of their rooms. It breaks up the monotony of the bare walls. If you have a space that can be confusing, like in the house where we created a loft in front of a large picture window, placing throw pillows, books, and stuffed animals can help define a space a little better. Large rooms and finished basements can often benefit from placing a foosball table, games, and other furnishings that convey the idea of a recreation room. A downstairs bar can be made much more inviting and turned into a must-have if you can include interesting glassware and other decorative touches. You don't need a bed to convey the idea of a space being a bedroom. In most cases, the bedroom space is pretty self-explanatory. You might want to soften the natural light with curtains instead of sheers, and you might want to add some throw pillows. In a child's room, we like to add maybe a small rug, dolls, stuffed animals, or even crayons and coloring books. If you have a bedroom that is a little small, think of staging it as a home office instead of a bedroom. Many home buyers will find it more than adequate as an office. Bathrooms make an important statement, and they are much more than just a functional space. We like to make it as spa-like as possible. So look for bath salts, soaps, soft towels, and other accessories that you can position around the tub or shower areas. For a family bathroom, I add kid soaps, bath finger painting products, and fun sponges. Sometimes I include a shower curtain, sometimes not. I like whimsical sayings in the bathroom as well as in the kitchen, anything to catch the home buyer's attention. Small spaces or awkward spaces benefit greatly from staging. In one long kitchen where there was not really enough room to place a regular kitchen table, I put a bistro table with 2 chairs in front of a picture depicting a cafe. It was such a hit that the buyers asked that both the table and the picture be included in the contract. Small lost spaces can also find new purpose by positioning a comfortable chair and a little table with a magazine or two. Just the idea of using it as a relaxing place to read is enticing. Place an easel and crayons or paints in a small space with slanted attic ceilings where only a child can stand. It transforms a useless space into a whimsical, cozy spot. We purchase our staging materials all over, from home furnishing stores to thrift shops. Some of my wall hangings are repurposed Christmas gifts or inexpensive art found at Aldi's, Walmart, and Target, or sometimes objects I take from my own house because they fit a specific space for a specific reason. I keep my eyes open for sales or deals on furniture, small chairs, tables, and small shelving units that I can place in my properties. End-of-season sales are also great, too, to get a great deal on outdoor furniture or pots or other furnishings. When should you remove the staging materials? Staging materials and furniture can require a sizable budget. And when you have several properties to show at the same time, you may be tempted to take the furnishings from one property that's already under contract to another. However, when the home buyer sees the bare space, it can be disappointing because it doesn't look like it did with my decor. If they had not yet imagined where they are going to place their own furniture, the space may not hold as much of an emotional pull as they had previously felt. It's better to leave everything in place until after the last walkthrough, if possible, than to have a homeowner disenchanted. On page 98 and the following pages, there are some pictures and comments on different staging effects that I used in some of my projects. Selling your property. Now that you've finished your project and staged it, it is time to think about how you're going to sell it. By this point, you have probably already decided whether to sell on your own or hire a realtor. I personally have sold several houses through Craigslist without a realtor. I've even sold houses before they were finished. Anything is possible and everything is a possibility. There are advantages to selling your house yourself. You don't have to pay commission to a realtor. You can show your project yourself, and after all, who can better talk about the work you have done than you? You will probably convey your enthusiasm and passion about the house and talk about all the upgrades you made. You will have to be available to advertise the house, take phone calls, make appointments to show it, and risk having some no-shows waste your time. You will need to renew your ad on Craigslist, possibly advertise it on other websites, and keep all listing and ads up to date. And all in all, it is a full-time job to sell a house. Once you find a buyer for your house, you write up a contract. It is pretty easy, providing you have a purchase agreement and know how to fill it out. The buyer then takes the purchase agreement to his or her lender and orders a home inspection. This is the tricky part. As much as we try to make sure our houses will pass the inspector's wandering eye, there will be things that escape us that may get flagged during the inspection. This is where deals can go south. Here is where I like to speak directly to the buyer. You can reassure them that you will make the repairs or adjustments or negotiate which repairs you want to make. Let's look at the other side of the coin. Entrusting the sale of your house to a realtor means access to the MLS. When your house is listed on the MLS, you have access to a whole pool of realtors whose clients are potential buyers. Since most activity occurs within the first 2 weeks that your house is on the market, exposing it to the power of the MLS means a flurry of activity as soon as it hits the list. So how do you choose a good realtor? Ask your fellow investors who they use. You want someone who actually has a good track record for selling houses. One important question to ask whoever you're considering is what percentage of the houses that they get under contract falls through. It takes someone who can think quickly on their feet to have the right answers to make the buyer comfortable. Ask plenty of questions until you feel that you have found the right realtor for the job. My goal is always to sell above market value. And to do that, you must be confident in the quality of the product you're delivering. If you have done your homework and your project is above everything else, you can reach past the number your realtor suggests. I can't tell you how great it feels to prove your realtor wrong when you sell above and beyond what they were insisting was top dollar for the neighborhood. Happy sales! The rest of my book, How to Sell Your Flip Above Market Value in 2 Weeks, details every project, what kind of work was done, the budgets involved, and has, of course, pictures. So if you want to see the rest, I would suggest that you buy my book, shameless plug once again, that you can find either on Amazon, How to Sell Your Flip Above Market Value in 2 Weeks by Danielle Haydock, or that you can find on itsyourflip.com. You can join our It's Your Flip community on Facebook or send me a message on the website. Happy sales!